Everybody, how's it going?
Hey, Brian, I'm glad you turned your camera on. I was thinking it was something wrong.
Yep.
Widespread outage of cameras today. We're all having a bad hair day. I don't know.
We're all being antisocial.
Oh, it's
Great job last week, Diane and Brian, from the 5 minutes that I saw.
Thank
Thanks.
you, Bob. Yep. Sorry for the last minute panic about time.
My son wants to make dinner for his sister. He's 10. She's 8.
Tell him he can come over here and make dinner for me.
I just don't know. I'm not sure you want him to.
I think I'd take a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at this point.
I think he might be able to do that if you walk him through it slowly. He's not going to know where any of the utensils are though, because he still doesn't know where they are in this house.
Let's see, we have 6 so far, I think. Let's see. We need one more.
Well, while we wait, I have to, and well, here's Stacy, so we're good
Stacy's
now.
here. But go ahead, what, did you want to share something with us?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I have to jump off early because I have
Okay.
another meeting at 6 o'clock. So I have to jump off at like 5:55 to get that set up, but in case I don't get the opportunity to say it, I was just thinking that for the building committee and for me, and I think for the high school, it would be helpful if at the end of each meeting, Brian, if left field, like the last slide of each meeting's presentation is, this is what the district must do, this is what the high school must do, and this is what anybody else, the school building committee, needs to do before our next meeting, and that way we can kind of hold each other accountable.
Yep.
I just worry that if that's not clear, and if we don't get those things done, then we're gonna fall behind. And I know how stringent MSBA is with their dates, and I just don't want us to fall behind because we lost track of something. Everybody is so busy and we're all moving in 1,000 directions. I think that would be helpful.
Sure. Yep. We'll do that. And I think tonight's going to be more of a general, just sort of give everyone a flavor of what's to come, and the meetings that we're looking at in February, I think will start being a lot more prescriptive with here's the exact game plan. We can make sure we sort of end it on those sort of summaries.
Great.
I think we just have the 7th.
Okay, so I guess we can get started. We are recording. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Revere High School Building Committee meeting number 28. Today is Thursday, January 27th, 2022, and the time is 5:34 p.m. Linda, roll call, please.
Yes, I will start with Mike Picardi,
Here.
Mayor Arrigo. Absent. Stacy Rizzo,
Here.
Susan Gravellisi,
Here.
Dr. Kelly,
Here,
Carl Svensson. I don't see him, absent. John Perella.
Here.
Excellent. Jennifer Hayes,
Here.
Rich Viscay. I don't see him, absent. Don Sermella. Absent. Nick Rystrom. Oh, you are here, Nick.
Yep, here.
Glad you could make it.
Thank you.
Jerry Visconti.
Here.
Thank you. And Patrick Keefe. I don't see, absent. Okay. Thank you, Susan. We are going.
did you get Jennifer Hayes? Did I miss that?
I'm here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jennifer, she already knows what row she's in. She unmutes herself a couple of people before. It's smart. Right. All right. Going down our quick agenda for today. We have published meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was the January 13th meeting minutes.
Motion to approve those meeting minutes?
Second.
Thank you, Stacy, and second by Susan. And we will do roll call for approval. Mike Picardi,
Yes.
Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly,
Yes,
John Perella,
Yes.
Jennifer Hayes,
Yes.
and Nick Rystrom,
Yes.
Jerry Visconti.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. That is all I had for housekeeping. So, Brian, are you or Dawn taking over?
I can drive if you want me to. Donna, up to you. I'm not sure if you have it on the screen or not, but I think just in general, I wanted to just do a quick recap, and then Perkins Eastman had some slides we sent around that I want to walk through to just give you a sort of flavor of what's coming in as we transition into schematic design. But just as sort of a quick update, I think everyone knows the school committee and city council unanimously approved the recommendation to go with Wonderland as the preferred option. So really huge milestones to get by. And when I say we here, the project team is sort of, we've got two parallel train tracks that we're really going to start working on and have already started working on. One is focusing in on the preferred schematic report submittal. That's what we've been saying for months is due to the MSBA by March 3rd. So now that we have the decision, there's a whole lot of narratives to write, a whole lot of summaries from these meetings and presentation to bring together into that submittal. We're going to look to meet once, maybe twice in the last 2 weeks of February. So the last 2 Thursdays, I think it's the 17th and 24th. I'd like to pencil those in. We might or might not be ready to go on the 17th. We might do it on the 24th. But the goal is to have a draft of that PSR report out to the committee so you can look through it. You know, there's no new decisions in there. It's just sort of bringing all the info we've shown you at various meetings together into one spot and linking it all with a whole bunch of narratives about why the decision was made. So that's sort of one of the train tracks. Finish the PSR report, get it to MSBA. The other train track is schematic design, which technically comes after the PSR, but we have so much to do in schematic design that we're effective. We'll start including where we're at in the work plan, what's coming up in the next few meetings, and what we need homework done for by various groups. So those two things are kind of at this point happen at the same time. We're effectively, we're not in schematic design yet. We still have to get the submittal into MSBA. We still have to do a few meetings with them, but we have a lot to do and move forward on. And we, the project team in the city, are also digging in into eminent domain over at Wonderland. In the coming weeks, we'll have sort of a more prescriptive, as I said before, update on exactly how and when that all is going to start happening over the coming months at the meetings in February. But for now, we're looking to have a few weeks where really the project team can put our head down, work on that report, work on the next steps in schematic design, and really develop the plan for eminent domain. So that's kind of my general update for the night. And I'll just see if anyone had any comments or questions before running through the slides.
Oh, well, because I don't think you have enough to do, I'm going to offer one more thing.
Sure.
If I ever saw a project that could use a CM at risk on board early, I think this is the one. And I know that process sort of has an upfront process, it takes some time. So if anybody had a spare minute to just at least get that first step going while you're doing other things, because I think you know what I'm saying. There's some unknowns on this project, and having that kind of perspective is just so valuable.
Well, the other thing we want, Joe, is I would like them to be the estimator,
Yes, sir.
because I want them to buy into this project at schematic design and not be given this project and design development where we've already all kind of signed up for the cost.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I think that's a good point, and I think that is something we do need to get moving on.
Yeah, and for me, if they're here to do the estimate of schematic design, it's too late. For me, I want them here to participate in sort of shaping that schematic design. Not obviously from a design perspective, but from how do you, if it turns out there's things under the ground, there's complications, having that perspective on how to solve those problems early, I just think is invaluable.
Yep. And I actually did, thank you, Joe, for mentioning that. I was actually started in today on the Inspector General application. That's sort of the first step, is to get a pretty standard report into the Inspector General's office. We'll have that report ready to go, I'd say, in the next week or so. Again, there's nothing new in there, so I don't think that that application really needs to flow through a building committee meeting. We're going to pull it together, give them a history of the project, tell them why it's CMR, get that report in, and as soon as we get that clearance from the Inspector General, we'll start a procurement for real. So develop the RFQ, figure out the schedule for ads. I can tell you that large contractors know this is out there, and and they're mentioning it. Dan's probably had some similar comments the left field team has from other people we're working with, but they know it's there. They're following along. I actually had a number reach out to me this week, just following along, understanding there's a Wonderland decision now. So there's a market for it. As we've said before, it's probably only going to be the biggest contractors out there, but they know it's coming, and I think this is there's going to be a big job for a lot of them to chase after.
Well, that's great. I was looking for that first step, and it sounds like you're once again ahead of me. So thanks.
I wouldn't say ahead. It's a big document. I succeeded in getting the right city of Revere in there, and a bunch of names and phone numbers. So we basically have to just sort of pitch to them. It's usually a couple dozen page summary and report that they sort of give it the blessing and say, yep, we agree. I don't want to speak for the IG's office, but I can't see any way that this would ever be shot down to go CMR 100.0%. So
Brian, you may want to ask who wants to represent the SBC or the city. We need to get their resumes and include with the packet as well.
yeah, that's a good point, Lynn. I was looking at that today. I think I'm going to email a few folks. Most likely the mayor is going to be listed as the key contact, but I think if there's anyone in this group who really wants to be tighter to the contractor procurement here, I think it's something that,
They
know.
want people involved in construction, so they'll want resumes that show that.
Yep.
So like Carl, and
Yeah.
others.
I think Carl and some of you folks from the city, I think we'll be reaching out to, just say, it only bolsters the argument to show that, there's people involved with the committee that, know construction, have been there, done that, so.
Lynn,
Can I
so what you're
suggest,
saying, I'm
sorry,
just gonna say, Lynn, are you saying my arts and crafts are not valuable?
I am not saying that at all.
Different type of value. Yeah.
so Brian, can I suggest that along with the mayor and Carl, you add Nick and Don Chiramello to that?
Yeah,
Group.
that's a good idea. Yep. So I'll get a
The
little.
entire
email out to those guys.
SBC will be named in the application as well. They asked for a list of that, but
Yep,
they are
yep.
looking for the representatives that have construction background.
So I'll be in touch. I know we have Nick here, but I'll reach out to a few of those folks and let them know what we might need to put into that application. If there's nothing else, I think we can look through this little schematic design preview presentation here. I'm gonna see if this goes full screen.
It does, Brian.
Does it look all right? Sometimes full
It
screen.
looks like,
gets a
yeah,
little
there you
weird.
go. There you go. Yep.
Okay. Yep.
I was gonna offer to share. I didn't want to interrupt you earlier, but it looks like you're on it, so thank you. So we were asked to just give a preview for everyone what to expect in schematic design. There's a lot here. So meaning like a lot in schematic design that gets decisions that are made are pretty front loaded in the MSBA process. Before we go through sort of the design piece, which is fun and exciting, and hopefully I can get through it before you have to leave, Diane. I don't know if she's still on, but Dan had a quick schedule, just kind of what to expect and what sort of groups need to start.
Are you
forming
saying
to
this is boring?
without saying it? No, I'm kidding. Go ahead, do your thing, Dan. It looks nice.
Yes, it's graphically pleasing. So we're, as you all know, we're about to wrap up preferred schematic report, which is the second of the three pieces of the feasibility study. And we're going to enter what is probably the most important piece of or the second most important piece of the feasibility study, which is at the end of this, the number that we present to MSBA and the scope we present to MSBA, we're locked into for the rest of the project, which is a little bit strange because for most projects, you don't have your complete and final picture of what you're going to do at the end of schematic, but in the MSBA's world, you do. So that means that the schematic here and for MSBA has to be much more robust, and there has to be a lot more done. And we don't have a tremendous amount of time, so there will be a very detailed and schedule that has lots and lots of involvement from many, many people over the next 4 to 5 months, where we're trying to collect every little bit of information and make sure that we put forth the right project at the end of this. So this kind of boils down the end of feasibility, which, as Brian mentioned earlier, we're kind of overlapping now because we're going to start a few of our team members on schematic right now while Dawn and I and Bob wrap up the writing in the preferred schematic report. That goes out to MSBA on right in the beginning of March. And then the schematic design, we're going to be going to the MSBA for the facilities assessment subcommittee meeting. I'm going to guess based on the size of the project, they're going to go with the second meeting, which is later in March, because they're going to need some time to review it and get their questions together. That's on the 30th. The board meeting is actually the end of April. So 4/27, they've actually released their 2022 schedule. So now we know exactly when things are going to happen. And into schematic design, we are looking at a early September, or basically August 31st submission to MSBA, which means August is going to be the time you'll start to see that you're going to see the pricing and the final product of the next period. You can go to the next slide. So this is just, I started to try to map out what we're going to need to do in the next phase. You can see these giant, I've made some of the site pieces I made bright red because one of the issues here is we really need to get onto this site as quickly as we possibly can. So I know we don't really have access to it right this minute, but I think we need to make an effort to try to get access to it. We have a survey that needs to be done. We have some hazardous materials that probably need to be investigated where the foundations of the old building and the dog track are. The phase 1 was never completed because we couldn't get on the site, and geotech, I do still own more borings that we couldn't do at RHA because they wouldn't let us on their site. So I'm going to use those over on this site. So that should give us a better picture. And I think the more we do, the better off we're going to be. The more we learn, the closer we'll be to the right scope. So we're going to be drawing all the way through July, and there's going to be a number of meetings that are going to happen, and we're going to ask to set up a few working groups. And I don't know if we want to start thinking about those now. We'd want one for interiors. We'd want one for exterior. We'd want one for mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, and that one would overlap with sustainability. We'd want a sustainability working group. Those are 4 I can think of right off the top of my head. There might be more. And we're going to do user interviews too through April, I think was the right time. I haven't run this by Bob and Dawn. They might be shaking their heads saying it's too early, it's too late. But that's kind of, as I start to map out how we're going to get to, and really our deadline is really that kind of mid-July-ish when we send everything to the estimator. That's pretty much where we have to end. So even though we're not submitting till August 31st, the mid-July period, late July is kind of where we have to send the drawings off. And then that whole month of August is going to be estimating and reconciling and, getting books together and getting things together to send to MSBA. So we're really looking at from today until basically the 3rd week of July as the schematic design period. So there's an awful lot to do. I did send Brian an email with another type of chart, which I think is probably going to be, based on Diane's comments earlier, is going to be the right kind of chart, which is, I don't know if you want to pop that up, but basically it gives you like a kind of a week by week time and event calendar, and tells us who we're going to meet with, what the activity is, and who's responsible to be at that meeting. So I will be creating that as well as refining the schedule as we move forward, so that we have the next meeting, we should have I'll have a detailed schedule and a detailed work plan that shows that's it. So you see it has all the dates there, the times that we're going to meet, the location at that time. This is for a different project, but we were meeting in person. Then we may have both here. The activity, what we're actually meeting about, and then the description of what it is and the responsible parties who should be at that meeting. So I'll do the same thing for this. It's going to be longer for schematic.
Can I ask you a question? Are there any issues about getting on the site because we don't own it?
I'm presuming that I really shouldn't be digging holes or poking around or putting a drilling rig on the site without approval or without the owner approving of that.
And do we have any indication of the owner's receptiveness to that?
None that I'm
Not yet
aware
to
of.
my knowledge. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's definitely going to be an area of focus for our, we meet with a subgroup over at City Hall on Mondays. That's going to be part of getting some sort of written agreement that allows us on that site is plan A, and plan B is basically talking to some lawyers. But one way or the other, we're going to do both, and we're going to find a way to get on that site in the coming months. As Dan said, I think it's a little bit different of us having consultants go roam around down there. It's not really fenced in, but actually bringing in testing and stuff. I think the city really needs to get written permission. So that's literally item 1A on next steps, Joe.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it until I looked at that schedule and realized, yeah, you don't own that site. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of complexity to that too, of how we're going to handle it. But that's about where we are. And I think that, so next time we meet, I will have these 2 things for everybody. And in the intervening time, I'll probably be reaching out and starting to set up that first round of meetings.
Okay, so my turn. We were just going to run through some examples of presentations that were given for a different project, but kind of give you a flavor of some of the excitement and the decisions that will need to be made in schematic design. All of these examples are for the Lowell High School. I'm going to flip through them quickly, but just to give you a flavor. So we went through with you guys, we have like basic massing. What we start to do from that is refine the massing, get into fenestration, look at where openings are. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Brian, start to look at landscape opportunities. Bye, Diane. And start to look at isolate and look at pockets within the landscape. Your green space on this particular project. So you can see the precedent images on the right, just to start to look at the design of it, have conversations about it, talk about materiality, and look to refine the design in order to set the budget that Dan talked about.
Just jump in for 1
Next.
second,
Yeah,
Don.
go ahead.
I would encourage folks, like a lot of times we hear good ideas from people on building committees, examples from other schools, examples from colleges you might be visiting with kids or something. So get photos of things you like, especially you folks who are going to be in that school every day in terms of what works for schools. And Perkins Eastman has a ton of ideas. There's a lot of directions we can go, but if there's examples of things that you folks like that you see out there, get some photos and send them through to the team, and one way or the other we'll find out how to incorporate them.
Great point, Brian. Lots and lots of ideas from building committee members and community members that have been woven into our design. So yes, by all means, send everything you have along. So moving on from landscape, we start to look at, again, some fenestration. And in this particular case, we were looking at exterior materials. So this is sort of a general rendering. If you want to go forward to the next slide, as we think about materiality and what the building wants to look at, we always look at precedents. I'm already pulling together precedents from Revere, and that'll likely be illustrated in the next meeting. But these are particular to Lowell. So Lowell history, Lowell High School history, they had some existing buildings that were being kept and renovated. And so these are examples of that. So how do you weave together those materials? If you want to move on to the next one. In this case, we looked at some civic examples in Lowell, City Hall, the new courthouse, and a courthouse in Boston, but just looking at a neutral material because we already had some existing materials to use. So this is, again, an example of a different project, but ideas that we bring to the table. So then, Brian, if you want to go to the next, we start to look at what the actual materials are. We rate them based on durability, cost, maintenance, life cycle. You'll find when we get to the interiors, that'll be true for those materials as well. So in this particular case, some of the bases that we were looking at, the base of the building, the lowest level, we were looking at brick, simulated stone, CMU. So we look at the durability, the estimated cost per square foot, and then talk a lot about the maintenance and how easy is it to clean? Does it graffiti easily? Those kind of topics. So if you move on to the next one, we also looked at some other facade materials and gave examples of those. So with those materials, we talked a lot about what they are and how they perform. If you move on to the next couple, Brian, what we did was looked at what that actually visually looks like in that same rendering that I just showed you earlier. That was just kind of a white and gray. So in this case, brick and facade, spoiler alert, this is what they chose, but we gave them other options. And we had other renderings. I pulled this down. We had other renderings throughout the building so they could see the different buildings. But if you want to scroll through, I think we gave them 3 options. This one changed the base, and then the next one had I think a different phenolic up top. The next slide. So we talk a lot about what the materials are, how they perform, what do they cost. So we had a baseline here that we carried assumptions in PSR, kind of like what we were doing here. This was the assumption there. And then we were asked to look at the cost relative to that. So obviously option 1 was substantially, you can see it was $200 some odd less expensive than the assumptions we made in PSR. And that's actually the direction they ended up moving forward with. So just again, kind of comparisons, talking about materials. So this led them down that road with some additional information that I took out just for the sake of walking you through this. So then we went on to the interiors, and similarly, if you go to the next slide, Brian, we looked at those same comparables for each material. And in this case, we start to lay out what it is per space. So if you want to go on to the next slide, we look at kind of typical classroom finishes. What are we proposing? In this case, acoustical ceiling tile, just painted gypsum wallboard, and then linoleum floors. And how do they function? How durable are they? What are the estimated upfront costs? And then the maintenance of all of them. And we keep and try to update. We have a whole spreadsheet that keeps current costs of everything, and then maintenance updates as we learn from each project. So in this case, here's the classroom. Brian, if you want to move forward. Typical corridors, we added lockers in. We're still proposing linoleum floors there. And then the next one I think was their gymnasium. So painting the structure. We had CMU walls, of course, wall pads, some Tectum panels up high on the walls, and then sports flooring, both wood and they have a track. So again, looking at all the same comparables. And then lastly, Brian, at the end of schematic, we put forward, and this was true for a few different key spaces throughout the building, but you can see how those materials were envisioned for their particular gymnasium. So lots of discussion about materials, lots of talk about cost, and then some visuals to go alongside of it. And then this is something we did in Lowell, and I talked to Brian and Dan about planting seeds early to start to think about this. Experiential graphics are really important because they build community and student pride throughout the building. And in this case, you can't read what's on the left, but it's okay. What we did was highlighted all the places on each floor of the building. We cut sections through each, and this is a large building, each area of the building, and highlighted different types of these graphics and what they might be. And on the right, you're seeing some precedents, and this is all specific to Lowell. So if you move forward to the next, there's a lot there. This is 622,000 square feet. But what came of it was our graphics team not only did a signage package for basic signage, but also all these different Lowell specific graphics to build student pride. So in the case of the welcome on the entry wall, that's all the different languages. I'm going to say there's almost 50 languages spoken in that school. So we highlight welcome, the word welcome to our school, basically in all of these different languages. There's a lot of Lowell and LHS, and then the top right-hand two walls are their bridge connectors from each side of the campus, either side of the canal, but it knits together the textile. Those little swirls that you see are indicative of thread in the history of Lowell and the textile mills that were in Lowell. And they speak to the industrial, cultural, and then the high school history of that school. So as students pass through these walls every day, they're reminded of the history of the city, the school, and also prominent alumni. And then lastly, there's some history of the canal system, which, as we all know, is unique to Lowell. So that was something we started fairly later in the process there. We got a lot out of it. And I think the deep dive into the history of that particular city was critical to understanding some of this. So I just want to plant that seed as something to think about, because there's a lot of history in Revere. There's, the first public beach, and there's the Wonderland, both as a amusement park and a Greyhound racing track, and so much more. And of course, the culture. So just planting a seed of things that could come. And if there's interest and excitement about participating in this process, by all means, the earlier we start, the more we get out of it. So it can also inform the architecture. So if that is, if we want to dive deep into it earlier, I certainly welcome that. And it can start to inform the building itself. So that's the exciting fun stuff. That's why I joke about Dan's schedule, because for me, this is where all the excitement comes to life, like what the building actually starts to look like, what it feels like, how the student experience is, and then how all of the uniqueness to the city in which it's being built can evolve.
And to double up on something that Dan mentioned earlier, I think we'll try to put together a list of these for the next building committee meeting, but this is probably one of the more fun assignments for a point person. For some of these topics, I think it's kind of obvious who we're going to pick. For mechanical stuff, we're going to probably make Carl or continue with Carl being, the point person. And why I wanted to mention this too is not all of these little groups can and should become actual subcommittees. We might find along the way that a few of these should be an actual subcommittee, but as something we sort of noted earlier in the project, it's a lot easier for us on some of these topics for someone from the committee to raise their hand and for the committee to sort of knight that person as the point person to work with various parts of the team. Other people can attend, other organizations can attend. For example, with this branding and environmental graphics, there might ultimately be outreach to the Revere Society for Cultural and Historical Preservation. I know there's a lot of people in the community who really know this stuff. So I'd be thinking about certain topics, whether it's sustainability, environmental graphics, branding, of if it's something you're interested in the coming meetings, we might ask the committee to knight a point person to help us formulate the plan. That was basically what we had for tonight. We don't have as I said, we're gonna be putting our head down in the sand and really working on this report for the next few weeks. And we'll be laying out a lot of these next steps in detail, but just wanted to introduce some of the high level things that are coming. If there's any questions, we can check for them right now. I don't think I see hands. No hands. So let me just double check the agenda. I don't think we really had anything else to go through tonight. As I noted, I think we'll confirm via an email, but I think I would ask the committee to plan on, let me look at my calendar. I think we should plan on the 17th of February and the 24th of February. We might ultimately only need one of those. But if we could hold those 2 nights, we're going to spend the next 3 weeks really focusing in on this report and launching schematic design as we talked about tonight.
Brian, just to let everybody know, I'll send out those meeting invites today so that they're on everybody's calendar. I'd rather have them on there and be canceled versus the opposite.
Yep, agreed. Good idea. Thank you, Linda.
Yep,
Just
I'll
to
send
note,
that out right after this meeting.
Brian, the 24th is school vacation week. I don't know if that affects others. I know I'll be away that week.
Okay.
So like, I don't know if Diane and anyone from the school is taking off for some time, but it's something to think about.
That's
as
a
it
good
relates to
point.
School schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, we might, the second, if it is going to be 2 meetings, the first one will probably be the longer one. We'll have a little more content to cover. The second meeting, I always just wanted to tuck a meeting in before March 2nd, simply to get a motion to submit the PSR. So we need to get the PSR done. We need to get a draft to you to look at. But we do need a meeting if that weekend becomes, if that week of the 21st through the 25th becomes bad, we might just look for a quick meeting on the following Monday or Tuesday just to these major submissions to the MSBA are something that we feel need to come along with a motion to submit.
We can always at least put them on the schedule and then sort of check on a roll call to see if we have enough people on the 24th that are not going to be traveling. At least we can get the motion through. So we'll put it out there and then we can readdress as we get closer to those dates.
Perfect. Any other questions from folks on the committee? If not, I'll just do a quick formal check here for if there's any public comment. I don't think we have any members of the public on, but now's your chance.
I don't see any.
All right, that's what we had. Someone is
So I'll
welcome.
make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you, Michael. We will do then a roll call to adjourn the meeting. Mike Picardi
Yes.
and Stacy Rizzo,
Yes.
Susan Gravellisi,
Yes.
Dr. Kelly has left, John Perella,
Yes.
Jennifer Hayes,
Yes.
and Nick Reister,
Yes.
and Jerry Visconti also has left already. So, and that is it then. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll get these meeting invites out so that they're on everybody's radar.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay,
Happy
thank
shoveling
you.
this
Good,
weekend.
Thanks all. Have a good night.
Good night.
bye, Quanah.